Welcome to Closer to Venus. I'm Johnny Burke, and today's guest is Susanne Arens. She is an evidential psychic medium and author of There Is No Death, which details her experiences with spirit orbs as well as afterlife communication. In this episode, we'll discuss her experience with the spirit world, as well as capturing images of spirits and interdimensional beings. Susanne, welcome to the program.
Hi, Johnny. Thanks for having me on.
This sounds like it's going to be an interesting one. Let's start with the obvious. When did you discover and how did you discover your mediumship?
I didn't really know I was a psychic medium my whole life. I did have some really weird things happen to me when I was younger, but I'm a simple farm girl. This wasn't a thing that we read about, watched on television or anything like that. It really wasn't until after the passing of our first daughter. When Morgan had passed away, that really sent me down a very deep rabbit hole. I'm raised Catholic. I am Catholic, but I still had a lot of questions. My father had passed away a number of years before that, and so I'd wondered, was he there to greet her? Was she scared? Was she alone? So I started to read a lot. When you're in need of something, like a birth of a child or a wedding or whatever, it just seems like information you need just comes out of the woodwork at you. And so I would find different shows and movies and books to read about this. And as I'm reading them, I started to realize that, oh my goodness, this kind of stuff has been happening to me for a very long time. Premonitions, all these kind of things. And so that's really what started me into investigating what was going on.
That triggered it. Okay, got it. When you were a child, did you have any type of experiences which you later on figured out they were psychic or paranormal in nature?
Only really a couple when I was younger, because most of the time when things would happen, you just dismiss it because it's not a thing. You don't know anything about it. So when something weird happens, you just don't give it a second thought. You just go, and then you just keep going. But there was a time when I was in middle school and we were at a PE class. So we were out on the track and field having to run. And the night before, I had a premonition of what was going to happen, where I was going to be, who was going to approach me, so on and so forth. And so when it happened, I became actually ill, physically ill, because the deja vu was so intense. And I can remember going through my life saying, oh, wow, check out the deja vu, or I'm having deja vu. You just dismiss it, thinking that deja vu was just this weird phenomenon, not realizing that I was truly having premonitions. It really wasn't until I got in my 20s that the premonitions got really crazy, where people would go, how the flip did you know that? And I have no idea. And it wasn't until I knew what I was that they gave it some credence.
And I've noticed that many intuitives that have that capability were very guarded about telling people about it. I knew one woman, for instance, that had a premonition that the police were on the road coming to a party. They were like 16, 17 in high school drinking, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And about a minute later, and she told her friends, we have to get out of here. Cops are coming. And one of her friends said something like, how do you know that? And after that, she was basically ostracized because some of her so-called friends were calling her a witch. So there's a good reason for that, right?
Right.
So was it in your 20s then that you started to have encounters with spirits?
No, that actually didn't happen until maybe 5-6 years ago now.
Later.
Yeah. I was laying in bed one night and you got the light sleep stage, and then you've got the REM stage, right? So I'm in between that. So that's when spirit's actually able to get a hold of you the easiest, because you're no longer in your thinking mind, right? It's shutting down. So now you're starting to go into a dream state. And I was having this bizarre dream that I was floating backwards through space, like through a dark void area, but I had entities on each side of me. I couldn't really make out any details. There wasn't really any details with them, but I wasn't scared or anything. My husband bolts into the bedroom and goes, oh my gosh, look what just set off the surveillance equipment outside. And I can remember myself feeling like I'm being drawn back into reality. It was more than just waking up. I felt like I was like coming back. And I'm like, dazed. What are you talking about? And he goes, look. And our bed is right next to the window. So where my head was, this unique circular kind of orb, this mass, was hovering right outside our bedroom window at the exact time I was having an experience. I believe I was being transported someplace. So that really started that whole thing off. So then we were able to go back through just 30 days of footage. And I'm thinking, So that's really the catalyst for that.
So your energy apparently set off the surveillance system?
No, I think the entities that I have was having an experience with set it off.
How do you know it wasn't your energy? Because mediums are known to play around with electricity and so forth. So
We can mess with that by accident, yeah. No, because I had entities with me on each side of me as I was having this bizarre experience. And it wasn't like, I called it, I said dream earlier, but it was more like an experience. And as soon as he came running into the room and said, look, then it disappeared from the surveillance. So I don't know. I could have opened something up. I have had a portal open up in our house and entities come out of them. I've caught that on video and I've actually shared it on my social media so people can look at it themselves and go,
as a note for those that are listening to this episode, we will be posting said images on the social media clips when they're published at a later date. Just be on the lookout for that. Okay. These entities, other than the orbs, did they have any kind of structure or did you get visuals?
Yeah, you know what? I have hundreds and hundreds of pictures and video. Now that I realized, in fact, Spirit, they told me I would be writing a book and wanted me to write a book. And I said, oh, no, I'm partly dyslexic and I'm sure I got ADHD. So writing a book was never, ever something I considered. Next thing I know, again, like I said earlier, when you need to do something or aware of something, things come at you. So now I'm seeing social media posts, I'm getting emails, all this stuff's coming in, flooding into me about free writing courses, free this and that. I'm thinking, okay, I'll sign up for one of these free things. They're the ones who told me. I said, what am I going to write about? And they wanted me to write about the book, There Is No Death, Evidence of the Spirit World, Spirits and Orbs, so that people could see proof that life continues after death here, what we call death. Life literally continues on. And so they're giving me the ability to capture this proof in pictures and video so that people can see it for themselves. In fact, I even give people step-by-step instructions on how to do it themselves.
In the book, okay. That's really interesting because I've had several people on the show before that had spirits ask them or say, you are going to write a book. And more often than not, the speaker says, what am I going to write about? Just like you did. I'm not a writer. The point is they were not prepared to write a book, but they did, whether it was downloaded or whether it was automatic writing. What do you suppose that is? Is it because of the time we're in now, or is it just completely random?
No, there's a huge spiritual awakening happening right now on Earth. There is really a battle between good and evil going on. It's been festering for a very long time, and it's coming to a head now. I am very happy to report that the good is winning. And more people are going back to faith, spirituality, religion. They're going back to God. They're going back to something more divine, finding a purpose. People that have, I think, made us deal with the devil are now repenting and going to Jesus and God, and the shift is turning. And I'm just one of those little tools that the spirit world is using to help people wake up.
You mentioned religion just now. Being a medium, what kind of insight has it given you into the world of God, Jesus, Mary Magdalene? Because Christ and Mary Magdalene are coming up a lot more than most people realize these days. Visions, the energy of either. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a good one. So that's a loaded question. So
it's meant to be.
Good one. Honestly, it has deepened my faith in God. Now, I will tell you, do I think you have to go to church 3 times a week to be faithful? No, I don't. You can pray from home. God hears you no matter where you are. But here's what I've come to understand. Currently, my soul is in this vessel. And I'm a white girl with blonde hair, and my name is Susanne. I also drive a white SUV. Eventually, that car is going to get too many miles on it, and it's going to end up in the junkyard, or it's going to get in an accident. But either way, I'm going to end up without a car, and I'm going to need to get myself a new ride. Well, currently my soul is in this vessel. Eventually, this vessel is going to get too many miles on it, or it's going to get an offender bender of some sort, and it's going to end up in the cemetery. It still exists. I'm now just without a ride. So a lot of what I'm capturing are your energy, your soul. We know we're made of energy. When I communicate with souls that have passed on, most of them come in somewhat of a orby kind of shape. I have found those souls that tend to be older / interdimensional come in all sorts of forms and shapes. My soul's a little older than some on Earth right now, so I vibrate at a higher frequency, which allows me to make these connections to the spirit world, which is energy, right? Now, imagine our souls being 1,000,000 years older than we think we are, right? We don't necessarily might even need bodies anymore, right? Because we vibrate on such a high frequency. This is what I'm capturing. So a lot of what you might see as aliens or interdimensional, to me, spiritual and interdimensional really is one of the same. They're just very old, advanced souls that can come between this existence and the next. They can go between this plane and the next. I do believe there's multiple dimensions. I've even done tests to say, hey, if there's an interdimensional around, can you show up? I'd love to talk to you and capture you on camera. And I've shared these videos on social media as well. But yeah, they came more than once.
Old souls versus young souls. I've been told that old souls can also accumulate a lot of karma, whereas younger souls can navigate the world a little bit easier because they don't have a lot of karma. Is that true for everyone or not necessarily?
No, I don't have that same belief. New souls, like you might have a lot going on in your life. Like with me, you've gone through multiple kinds of cancer. You've lost your dad, your child, you've had heart surgery. Some of us have had a lot go on, right? And then you can look at your sibling or your next door neighbor and they just skate through life with no big deal, right? That would be a new soul. They couldn't possibly go through what an old soul could handle. When they tried, this is where a lot of times suicide comes in. So newer souls, they're kind of like in elementary school, right? You couldn't possibly give them an exam a high schooler takes. They wouldn't do it, right? They couldn't get through that. Some souls graduate from high school and they go, yeah, I'm good. I don't need to reincarnate again. I don't need to learn anything else. I'm going to be happy at where I ascend in heaven. The next guy, my next soul comes along and says, yeah, you know what? I'm going to go for an associate degree. 2 more years. I want to learn how to do this in heaven. Somebody might go for a master's, bachelor's, PhD, right? Every level you ascend to gets harder and harder, right? Because you're learning more and more because you're ascending to something that's going to require a lot more skill set because there is levels in heaven.
And you also do past life readings, which I thought was really interesting. So how does the past life readings or the ability to do past life readings impact your mediumship work?
I take my clients into a meditation. And so I'm in there and experiencing it with them. And then when we get to a certain point in the process, then I will ask them to look and see if they can sense certain things. If they cannot, I will have them stay with me and I will start to describe what's unfolding for me. And at some point along the way, they usually go, I can see that, or I know that. And so what I'll do then is I will step back and I will follow them and I will prompt them, look over here. Do you see anything? What are you experiencing? What does that look like to you? I don't feed them because this needs to be their own experience, but I help them to look in a certain spot, stop and think about something so that they can unfold it. And it's been shockingly meaningful. I can share a couple quick little stories if you want, if we have the time. I'm not sure. But
sure, because what I wanted to ask you is when you do the readings, it sounds like you're right there with them. Is it like watching a movie?
For me, it's like pictures, movies, right? I can sometimes smell as well. For them, it can be extremely visual. They're having an experience and they know things, they can feel things, they can see things. Sometimes they don't, but when they're in the meditation, what I'm describing has a really profound effect on them. There was one gal, and when I took her in, next thing I know, we're in Holland, the country of Holland. A long, long time ago, cobbled streets. I could see her. I could see a windmill. I could see the tulips. That's how I kind of sensed where we were at. We went down these narrow streets. She had a shop. I could see her hemming the bottom of someone's clothing. They were standing on this short little wooden stool. Then I said to her, oh, you're married to a gentleman. He's significantly older than you, but you do love each other. And next thing I remember, it was a very small place. So it was one big open room, a little kitchen in the back and a table area. And then actually there was like a little bed off to the wall where you'd think a couch or something would be. And I said, yeah, but you became very ill. You have a son. And I said, he's young. I think he's maybe, I would say 5-ish. And I said, but you become very ill. I said, you got pneumonia. and you know you're not going to live much longer. And I see you holding the hand of your son. I'm shortening this. Obviously, this goes on for an hour. So shortening that. And I said, you're very concerned about leaving your son, even though your husband's a wonderful guy, but this is going to be it for you. And so we basically ended the reading, and it was all done with. And I brought her out of it, and she's looking at me, and she's just crying. And I said, are you okay? And she goes, so I've had pneumonia several times in this lifetime. I have 2 young boys. My biggest fear my whole life that I was going to die of pneumonia and leave my boys without their mother. And so now that you know that actually happened in the last lifetime, you can stop fearing it for this lifetime.
You can cure the symptoms?
Yeah, because a lot of times we do manifest a lot of what's going on in our life. As an example, real short story, I was giving this elderly gal a reading, and I could see her on a rocky hillside, like really rough bushes, no trees. It was an old, like adobe 1-story building. There was a doorway with no door, a window with no window. It was like we were in the island of Nice, like overseas, long time ago. She could see across the way, the little village was over there, and they had big old wooden like galleon ships. And her husband would go out on that for 2 weeks to 2 months at a time. And then she also had a son and a dog, and I lived with her parents as well. And he'd go out, do his work, and then come back. One time he never came home, and she never remarried. She just always waited and sat outside and waited for him. Now, when the reading's all done, and I said, so let me ask you this. Do you suffer from maybe depression, or maybe do you have a concern about panic attacks, or that your husband's going to leave you or anything? And she goes, wait, what? Yeah, what? She goes, the whole time we've been married, I'm so afraid that every time he leaves the house, I have a little panic attack. Like I have a panic attack, like he's never going to come back. He's just going to go get gas on the car or run to the grocery store for me. But every time he has left the house, I have a small panic attack. And I said, that's because in that lifetime, he didn't come back, and that you're carrying that energy over. If you absolutely love Italian food, and you don't know why, you've never been there, but you just love it, chances are in one of your past lifetimes, you probably ate that as a staple of your diet. So you might have lived in Italy. Or if you're absolutely fascinated with Egyptology, right? You just watch all the shows, read all the books, high probability in one of your past lifetimes.
You were there. Can you tell the difference between a human and a non-human entity, what some people call either aliens or ETs?
Interdimensional beings seem to have this intense white energy line in them. It's very prominent, and it's very, very intense. Whereas the more interdimensional and spiritual, I mean, it can make more of a shape. And I caught those as well. In fact, I believe they were angels, truly. Caught them twice in our house in 1 week. When I'm communicating, like at Stephen Greer, we went out summer of 2004 out to Temecula, California for a CE5 event. We ended up doing a big meditation at night.
That was, I believe, an instance of ET contact.
Yeah, it was. So he brought us all into this special meditation. He's got a special process for doing that. In fact, if anybody's interested, you can download the app too. It's a CE5 app that helps you make these contacts. But anyways, he's walking hundreds of us through this. And I'm now in deep meditation. Of course, I don't know if there's any other mediums there, but I think that's just maybe why it worked a little differently for me. But I am having a conversation with 2 beings in their ship. And they're showing me what they look like. And they have 3 fingers, 3 long fingers. And they let me know that they can't reproduce anymore and that they don't mean any harm, all this kind of stuff. So they're sharing these things with me. Next thing I know, I can hear them talking, look, to the sky, which then snapped me out of it because I'm like, wait, what? They can see the people I'm talking to or the entities I'm talking with. So I unfortunately dropped my communication with them to look at what everybody else was looking at. Then I got the bright idea, get out your phone. So I started taking pictures.
You captured some images, which, again, as a reminder for everybody, we will be sharing that on the Closer to Venus social media, and I will tag Susanne, obviously. So I'm guessing if they're friendly, could you discern whether they were Arcturians or Syrians or Pleiadians or anything like that?
No, these guys had no clothing on. They had longer, skinny necks, faces, but larger eyes. very gauntly, very thinly looking. It was interesting, though, because Dr. Greer had warned us that whenever he does these events, the military and other people will come and try to intervene and scare off them. And sure enough, as we're watching these crafts, all of a sudden, here comes helicopters. And all of a sudden, off they go.
And why do you suppose that is?
Yeah, why do you think that would be, right? They come to break it up every single time. They don't want you communicating with them, apparently. So anyways, I showed Dr. Greer's main photographer who does all this for him. And he goes, oh my gosh, can I have those? Can you share those with me so that I can share them during our presentations? Because the one I got, the head of it, it's very faint, but the head of it is very similar to what they captured. I think they were in Peru when they had them right close in their circle. And somebody caught this picture of this reddish, angular faced thing. And so this kind of looks like it, plus a little bit of a body mass to it. And then I caught other lights and things as well. So
there are those that are of the opinion that the truth about extraterrestrials is too horrible for us to really even fathom. Do you get that kind of vibe from your experience or not necessarily?
No, I have no fear. And again, think about what we might look like in another 100,000 years. So these two said that they're no longer able to reproduce.
It's the first time I've heard about a race that can't reproduce, but has your experience with them given you any insight into disclosure?
No, I don't have any kind of insight like that. I do know that, again, a lot of what people are seeing are coming out of the oceans and the deserts and the skies, and they've been here longer than we have. They mean actually no harm. If there's something that is deemed harmful, you got to wonder, is that the black dark government people talk about that's trying to spin this into another World War III kind of deal, the War of the Worlds? Trust me, they're not. And from what I understand, a lot of them are us in the future. They are trying to come back and stop us from killing ourselves or extincting ourselves or making ourselves unable to bear children. It's not that they have means for making life, but they can no longer carry it in their bodies. And so they were trying to give children, this particular two that I was talking to, they're not our children. They are more for them to raise, more of the same. But I tell people, don't fear. Again, if you ascend and your soul gets to a certain level of ascension, right? We are energy. So a lot of what is, I think, spiritual / interdimensional, that kind of thing.
In your experience with the ETs, you've not come across reptilians or any kind of races that mean us harm?
I personally have not. But I also protect myself. I don't allow entities that are not of light and love to come near me. I daily do prayers and protection to make sure that doesn't happen. Don't go looking for trouble.
No, we're not going to look for it.
Don't dabble with what you don't understand. I don't know why, but spirit boards work. And the problem is, I think the majority of the stuff coming through that is not of good intention. There's a reason why the church has to continue to do exorcisms. There are good and there are not good. And so just stay in the light and love.
Good advice. Okay. Besides that, anything else we need to know, at least for today?
I don't think so. Do your homework. There's a lot of information out there on the internet now. And I think it was just recently, wasn't it, that President Trump said he was going to release the hounds, basically let it all out. So I don't know what that will entail, how much he actually has authority over, because I understand the dark black government, whatever you want to call it, that's behind the scenes, that's been controlling this whole narrative ever since President Eisenhower. I think they're really the ones calling the shots. So we can only hope that more comes out soon.
It's a good point. We don't really know who's actually in control. I'll leave everybody on that note. Once again, everyone stay in light and love and don't go fooling around with things you don't understand.
Exactly.
Good. Susanne, thanks for joining us today. Very interesting information. In the meantime, how can our listeners find you online?
My website is crystalpeakmedium.com. It's also my Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. You can find me on all those kind of handles as well. And there's a ton of this kind of information out there.
You've been listening to Closer to Venus. I'm Johnny Burke. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider subscribing. You can find more info at closertovenus.com. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.